25th of October, 1999, 25 years ago today, the fourth episode of Walking with Dinosaurs, Giant of the Skies, released. Today I will be re-breaking it down. The episode is set 127 million years ago in the Hotervian, 22 million years after Cruel Sea. It is set in the Romualdo Formation of Brazil, which was laid down in the Albian approximately 111 to 108 million years ago, the Lakota Formation of the USA, which was laid down in the Eurasian to Permian approximately 140s to 120s million years ago, the Wessex Formation of the Isle of Wight in England, also laid down in the Eurasian to Permian, and the La Honguera Formation of Spain, laid down in the Permian approximately 125 million years ago. The Wessex Formation segment was filmed in Highland, Tasmania, while the rest was filmed in various locations around New Zealand. Although every episode features at least one pterosaur species, this is the only one to focus on one and to feature more than one species. Ornithocheirus was an ornithocyrene lanciodontian from the early Cretaceous, 105 to 100 million years ago, of the UK and Morocco, meaning it was known definitively from Britain and likely from Spain, as Spain was approximately halfway between Morocco and the UK even then, but it didn't evolve for approximately 20 million years after the episode's setting. At the time of creation, Ornithocheirus was a wastebasket taxon, being known from around 150 to 94 million years ago of the US, South America and mainland Europe, as well as the UK and Morocco. The fact that many Ornithocheirus specimens were known from all around the world was thought to be evidence of its being migratory. These different specimens being assigned to the genus is likely the origin of the sexual dimorphism in the episode, but this was based on different species, not different sexes. The Brazilian species, Ornithocheirus marazembrinus, is now Tropiognathus. Tropiognathus was a Tropiognathine anhanguerid from the early Cretaceous, 121 million years ago, of Brazil, meaning it lived in the right place to appear in the Brazil segment, but evolved approximately 15 million years after the episode's setting. The American species is most likely based on Ornithocheirus cuvieri, now Simoliopterus. Simoliopterus was a Simoliopterid Targaryen draconian from the earliest late Cretaceous, approximately 100 to 94 million years ago, of Europe and the US, meaning it lived in the right place to appear in the US segment, but evolved more than 20 million years too late to appear. Its anatomy is mostly based on Tropiognathus in the series, as Ornithocheirus is quite fragmentary. Tropiognathus had a wingspan of 9 meters, Ornithocheirus simus, the only valid Ornithocheirus species, had a wingspan of 5 meters, and Simoliopterus had a wingspan of 3.5 meters, so none of them had a wingspan near that of the 13 meters of the creature in the episode. When walking, the pterosaurs are cumbersome and ungainly. We know from footprints that they would have been more graceful and quick on their feet. The wings of the Ornithocheirus, as well as the Tapejara and the unidentified pterosaurs, should fold back rather than to the sides, and their wingtips should likely be more rounded. The Ornithocheirus is shown skim feeding, and like the Rhamphorhynchus in the last episode, this is incredibly unlikely, and their snout morphology is completely wrong to do this. The episode states that pterosaurs could not fly in the rain, but we know this to be false, as several pterosaurs fed by diving into the water like gannets, which require them to get wet and still fly afterwards. The Ornithocheirus sea view model should have pycnofibers, but the puppet does have these. At one point, the Ornithocheirus lands feet first, when it would have in reality landed hands first. The model is slightly shrink-wrapped, and it is rightly not anthropomorph, but is being depicted as attacking the smaller Corkycephalus in order to steal fish, and not being treated like an ethical character, rather just a realistic animal. The Tapejara species in the episode, Tapejara imperator, has now been placed within Tupandactylus. Tupandactylus lived in the early Cretaceous, 121 million years ago of Brazil, meaning it lived in approximately the right place, but did not evolve until approximately 15 million years after the episode setting. Tupandactylus did not live in the Romualdo Formation with Tropiognathus, rather the Cato Formation, although it is possible that there was some faunal crossover as these grew around the same time in the same continent. This is because Tubetdactylus was in reality a frugivore, therefore living in the inland wetlands of the Cato Formation rather than the coastal Romualdo Formation. It should have longer legs and slightly smaller wings than are shown on the animal in the series. Tubetdactylus is given ridges on its crest, but in reality its crest was a thin sheet of soft tissue. It is unlikely that Tubetdactylus was sexually dimorphic, and like with Ornithocheirus, this is potentially based on multiple species being assigned to Tapejara at the time, with the females being based on Tapejara wellenhofferi, the only true Tapejara species. The crest of Tubetdactylus imperator was much larger and rounder. It too should have pycnofibers, which were not present on either the CGI or physical models. When the episode was written, Iguanodon was a wastebasket taxon, with a total of 24 species over its existence as a taxon being assigned to it. The episode features 2 species of Iguanodon on separate continents. The North American Iguanodon is based on Iguanodon lakotaensis, now Dakotodon. Dakotodon was a Styracostonan iguanodont from the early Cretaceous, approximately 130 million years ago, of South Dakota, meaning it lived in the right place to appear and at around the right time. It should be more heavily built and have longer, heftier forelimbs and lower hips with shorter back legs. Iguanodon's back should be flatter and less sloped due to this. The iguanodonts are stated as the first dinosaurs able to chew, but this is incorrect. Heterodontosaurs, which evolved more than 70 million years before the episode's setting, were in reality the first dinosaurs able to chew. The scene of the Dakotodon on the beach is based on the Dinosaur Ridge site in Dakota, where a massive trackway of iguanodont footprints were found, often thought to have been created by Eolambia. The Dakotodon's palms should face inward when walking quadrupedally. Due to another wastebasket taxon situation, at the time of the episode's creation, the American Hoplitosaurus marshii was lumped into the genus Polacanthus. Hoplitosaurus was a Polacanthosaurine nodosaurid, or possibly a Polacanthid ankylosaurian. Nodosaur taxonomy is currently in flux. From the early Cretaceous, approximately 130 million years ago, of South Dakota, meaning it lived in the right place to appear and around the right time to appear in the USA segment. It is unclear if there is a difference in design between the different continental variants, as they are very similar, but may have slightly different coloration. The not being able to tell is extenuated by the fact that we don't see the North American one in any clarity, but it is most likely just due to lighting differences. The Hoplitosaurus' snout should be shorter and rounder. Its legs should also be shorter, so its back should be flatter. Hoplitosaurus would have had a beak and a stiff tail, and the edges of its pelvic shield would most likely have been covered by its skin, and the numbers of digits and claws appears to be correct. An early flowering plant appears. Flowering plants, or angiosperms, evolved in the early Cretaceous 130 million years ago, so they would have been around at the time. There are no plant fossils known definitively from the Lakota Formation. The flowering plant is supposedly Protoanthus, a fictional genus created for the series. They appear to be represented by Drimys winteri, belonging to Winteraceae, a family of magnoliids, which does indeed date back to the Cretaceous, although to the Aptian, which began approximately 14 million years after the episode's setting. Winteraces are also only known from the southern hemisphere. A wasp appears. Wasps, or Apocreta, evolved in the Jurassic, meaning that they would be able to appear in the episode. There are no wasp fossils known from the Lakota Formation. A parasite appears. This is Sauropterus, a sauropterid flea from the early Cretaceous, 120 million years ago, of Asia, meaning it lived in the right time. Although it is exclusively known from Asia, it parasitizes on Ornithocheirus in the series, which is shown as migratory, so it is possible the old male picked it up while visiting Asia. Unidentified pterosaurs appear. They use the Corkycephalus model. There are no pterosaurs known from the Lakota Formation. There is only one ornithocheiromorphan pterosaur from the early Cretaceous of the United States, Euctenodactylus, a coloborhynchine anhanguerid from approximately 125 to 100 million years ago in Texas, meaning it lived in about the right time to appear, and possibly could have lived in what is Dakota. The pterosaur is not particularly accurate to Uctenodactylus, having a longer snout with small crests on the ends and no head crest, as well as the usual pterosaur inaccuracy of having two triangular wingtips. It is not identified in the episode, but it is a creature that reuses a detextured Liopleurodon model and was identified in external media as Plesiopleurodon. Plesiopleurodon was a polycotyledonid leptocleidian from the late Cretaceous, 98 million years ago, of North America, meaning it lived around the right place to appear, but evolved about 30 million years after the episode's setting. For some reason it is called Liopleurodon in the American version, which went extinct almost 30 million years before the episode setting, and lived in Europe rather than North America. The Plesiopleurodon is, like the Liopleurodon whose model it uses, oversized, being 25 meters long, not a realistic 2 to 3 meters. It should be much less robust, and though it had a large head for a plesiosaur, its head was nowhere near as big as that of a pliosaur like Liopleurodon. There are actually three genera of iguanodonts from the Wessex Formation: Comptonatus, Mantellosaurus, and Iguanodon. For simplicity's sake, we will assume that this is Iguanodon. Iguanodon was an iguanodontid hadrosauriform from the early Cretaceous, 126 to 122 million years ago, of Belgium, Germany, Spain, and Britain, meaning it lived in the right place and around the right time to appear. Their palms should face inward when walking quadrupedally. Iguanodon should also be more heavily built and have longer, heftier forelimbs, and should have a flatter, less lobed back. It should also have lower hips on its body and shorter back legs. This one is based on the one true Polacanthus species, Polacanthus foxii. Polacanthus was a polycanthine nodosaur, or possibly a polycanthid ankylosaurian, from the early Cretaceous, 130 to 125 million years ago, of England, meaning it lived in the right place and time to appear. Its snout should be shorter, and its head less square and more triangular. The Polacanthus's legs should also be shorter, so its back should be flatter. It should have a beak and a stiff tail, and the edges of its pelvic shield should most likely be embedded within the skin. It appears that the arrangement and number of digits and claws are correct to what is known of the genus. Utahraptor was a dromaeosaurine eudromaeosaur from the early Cretaceous, 139 to 134 million years ago, of Utah, meaning it lived on the wrong continent and went extinct approximately 7 years before the episode setting. The reason why the American Utahraptor appears in the UK is because, due to Polacanthus and Iguanodon being believed to have occurred in both North America and Europe, it was supposed that Utahraptor could occur on both continents too. At the time of production, there were no known dromaeosaurs from Europe, but there were several large indeterminate raptors from mainland Europe. There is now a eudromaeosaur known from the Isle of Wight at around 125 million years ago, Vectoraptor, which meant it would be around the right place and around the right time to appear, but it would not have been big enough to fill Utahraptor's role. Utahraptor is now known to have been much bulkier and would have had feathers. It also should not be able to pronate its wrist. It is slightly undersized, growing to 7 meters max, not the stated 5 in the series. Vectoraptor only grew to approximately 3 meters long. It is depicted as a pack hunter, a common trope in paleomedia, but there is no evidence for this. In fact, there is evidence against it, as there are fossils showing that young Deinonychus had differently adapted teeth, meaning that it had a different diet to the adults, something that they would have to do if they had a complex social structure like this. It is much more likely that dromaeosaurs would have hunted in disorganized gangs, forming temporarily to hunt. It is accurately portrayed as not being a pursuit predator, but being better at ambush hunting and running in short bursts. Utahraptor is portrayed as using its single claws as a slashing weapon, but they were not designed to take the forces that would occur during this, and it was much more likely that it and other dromaeosaurs would have used them for raptor-prey restraint, pinning down smaller prey, although a large bulky predator like Utahraptor could likely have hunted larger prey than itself with its powerful hand claws and large head. The Utahraptor is accurately given lips, as unlike other theropods, dromaeosaurs have almost always given lips in their depictions, and it should have a shorter, thicker snout. An unidentified British pterosaur appears. It is often identified by fans as Corkycephalus. Corkycephalus was an Anhanguerine ornithochiron from the early Cretaceous, 130 million years ago, of the Isle of Wight, meaning it lived in the right place and at around the right time. It uses a modified version of the Ornithochirus model with the snout crest removed, and has a shorter snout and a small crest on the back of its head, which is mostly accurate to the real creature, but it would have still had small snout ridges. It has the same pterosaur inaccuracies as all the others of having wingtips that are too triangular. Iberomezornis was an Iberomezornithid enantiornithine from the early Cretaceous, 125 million years ago, of Spain, meaning it lived in the right time and around the right place to appear. It is depicted with scaly legs, when its legs should have been covered with feathers down to just above the top of the feet. Iberomezornis might not have had a tail fan. Instead, it may have been more likely to have longer, more spread feathers, but this detail is not known specifically in terms of Iberomezornis, and this is very variable between different enantiornithines. It is shown nesting in trees when most enantiornithines are believed to have nested like megaplodes, warming their eggs by burying them in rotten plant matter. The outdated hypothesis that birds outcompeted pterosaurs is depicted being shown in microcosm through the Iberomezornis chasing the protagonist Ornithochirus away. This episode starts the trend of the 4th episodes of Impossible Pictures Productions having the saddest endings, which is followed in Prehistoric Park and Primeval Series 1. Through my secret methods, I've given this episode an accuracy rating of 62.5% accurate. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, leave a like, join me next week for my breakdown of Spirits of the Ice Forest, and goodbye.